Bird! Get him! Yeah! Ron Babe was right.
I'm feeling spry. Wow. As I'm recording this intro on Sunday afternoon, I am exactly 336 hours away from closing up my booth at Pheasant Fest 2025 in Kansas City. In fact, on my watch right now, you can't make this stuff up. It's 3:36 on my watch, and it's 336 hours from now. I will be folding up tables, folding up banners, packing away koozies and stuff that we didn't give away. It doesn't even seem like a whole year's gone by. Well, the title sponsor of this show is inviting you to something really special at Pheasant Fest. You know the title sponsor. Do I even need to tell you? No, of course I don't. You know it's on. Everybody knows it's on X. But what they're going to be doing is Friday, March 7th at 9 p.m. right in the convention center in Hall 1501. They're going to have a after party with music, free beer, celebrating 20 years of Quail Forever. It's in the name of this is going to be It's Time for the Quail to Take Over. It's the Reign of the Quail Party. Free beer, live music, me, I'll be there. So if you love bird dogs, you love quail, you love free beer, you know where to find me. I'm going to be at the Reign of Quail Friday night, 9 p.m. Don't miss it. It's going to be a hoot. See, when I say Onyx works with us and is the sponsor of every hunt, the sponsor of every trip, it's the sponsor of this party. This is a great party. So if you are on the fence about coming to Pheasant Fest, which you shouldn't be, but, with work, family, time off, whatever, you could be on the fence technically. You're not on the fence because you don't really want to go to it. You're like, oh, can I squeeze? Take the drive. Take a half day off. Get there in time for Friday night's party. Walk the floor Saturday. Get home on Sunday if you have to. But anyway, it's going to be a hoot. In fact, almost all my sponsors are going to be there. Gunner Kennels is going to be there. Garmin's going to be there. Canine Athlete's going to be there. Mossberg's going to be there. Purina Pro Plan's going to be there with the Bird Dog stage. Marshware's going to be there. Arxis USA is going to be there. My four-wheel camper is going to be in our huge, when I say huge area, I'm not just saying 4 booths here. I'm talking a whole aisle's worth of Hunting Dog Podcast friends and family. Now, Walton's won't be there, but the Walton's crew is going to be walking the floor. I'm going to be doing a podcast with them. And W's not going to be there, but they're going to be there in spirit because not only do they give you the best service, they're helping to pay for my extra space so I can bring my four-wheel camper in on the show floor. So technically, the only sponsor that won't be there is the one that keeps the lifeblood of this kennel going every day, in and out. Well, I shouldn't say every day. Every afternoon and evening. It's Watermark Brewery. Now, if I could just somehow get enough barrels of beer and bring it down there and sneak it into the after party. Nothing against the beer they're going to have. It's free. Free beer is absolutely fantastic. But if I could sneak some barrels of Watermark down there, boy, we'd spread this thing like wildfire. But until then, if you're driving up or down US 31 this winter, this spring, this summer, and I do that a lot, most everybody from Michigan's got to go around the bottom of the lake unless you're dumb and go across the top. You get off at the John Beers exit and you go to Stevensville, Michigan, go to Watermark Brewery and see what a real bar brewery is like. Because that's what this kennel is right now. Anybody who comes over here gets treated to free Watermark beer. I'm telling you, you don't have to go to Kansas City to get free beer, but if you go to Kansas City, you're going to get free beer from Onyx. All right. Hey, this episode, it speaks for itself. I'm really happy. I've been judging with the Versatile Hunting Dog Federation for the last couple years, and we get into a little bit of a deep dive. But the reason we're doing this episode is because I know there's a lot of the versatile fellas and girls listening to this show every week, and this is a great testing system. And I've got Jeff Funky and Chad Work on, and we're going to talk about a little of the history, a little bit about where it's been and where it's going. We're talking about make versatile hunt test great again, basically, and a couple hunting stories. All right. Boy, that was a record. 5 minutes and 8 seconds, and I got nothing else to say. Well, I could say that, K9 Athlete has a 25% off first-time code using the word K9 Athlete, and I could say that Marshwear HDP 15 for all you listeners for Marshwear purchases. And, I could say that. I didn't. I forgot to say that. Walton's HDP 10. So if you need anything for your wild game cooking, I could say that. I didn't, but I am now. And, of course, Patreon patrons. Well, first of all, anybody who's Patreon patron is going to get all kinds of bling when they come to the Pheasant Fest booth. I got extra bling for patrons, okay? And might even have a beer. And, yeah, I said that. I shouldn't have said that. But, I mean, what's the chance that the convention center's listening to this podcast? And but if you want to be a patron of this show, you just go to patreon.com, Patreon. Look up Hunting Dog Podcast and join the thousands, well, it's not thousands, hundreds of people who are members of the HDP Patreon. We do Zoom rooms. We have extra content. We have the history of my dogs. We're putting up the Upland Institute in segments month by month so you can get a real good feel for what the Upland Institute is all about. So there, I extended it to 6.5 minutes. That's not that bad. Love you guys, love you girls, and I love you people coming to Pheasant Fest. Just a smidgen more. See you in 2 weeks. Boom. All right, everybody. I am on a Zoom call chat with Jeff Funky and Chad Work. I know you know those names because they've both been on the podcast. Jeff Funky lives out in Idaho, and he's the feller who I met in NAVDA many years ago, and then he was mysteriously gone. And Jeff, what happened? What you just disappeared back in 04 or 06 or something like that. What happened?
Well, I knew too much, and they triggered the trap door, and that was it.
I forgot about the trap door in Applegate's office. I forgot about
you knew. I tried to stay with. I judged for a number of years with NAVDA after we started the federation, and it just got to be too much where I couldn't judge for both organizations. So I finally resigned from NAVDA. I'm a life member, so I still keep up and get the magazine. But no, 2008, somewhere in there, we, some of us had different ideas on what we should be looking at in a dog testing organization, and we got together and a couple meetings, and eventually wrote out the test rules, and we started Versatile Hunting Dog Federation, and yeah, that's where I went, and that took up the bulk of my time.
Well, in the federation, it's definitely it covers the versatile hunting dog. Is it more a culmination of what they did in Germany, or what you didn't like doing currently in the States? How did you kind of come up with the system?
So I ran and judged in quite a few different venues. I had done NAVDA. I was on the national board. I was clinic leader, senior judge, and so I'd done clinics, and I'd been to the Invitational. I judged for AKC hunt tests and field trials, and I also was a regional director in NASTRA, National Shoots Retreat. So I judged for them. I judged at the regional championship level. And so I'd done quite a bit of that stuff. And then I also got involved in VDD and started using the the European testing system, the
Mhm.
JGHV system. So I had all that in my background, and we the other person that was really a founding member for VHDF was Joe Schmutz, and he'd never done any field trials or any AKC stuff, but he'd also done a number of the European type tests, and in fact, their large Munsterlander club still to this day, they follow the group in Germany, and
Right.
they collaborate somewhat on what they do.
Right.
But so we kind of took what we thought were the best of all of those things, and rolled them into one that we thought would be the best for the average North American foot hunter.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can say from judging a few tests now, it's I wish you'd have started this a long time ago, and I wish I'd have been doing it for a long time ago because uh I mean this to a novice it might seem very similar, but there's just parts of it that are really more about hunting and keeping that like are we keeping that hunting in mind all the time while we're judging. And one of my mentors, and you know him, Jeff, well, was Ken Whitney. And he always told me that while he was teaching me as I was an apprentice, he would always go back like, Ron, this is we're trying to get as close as we can to a hunting situation, not a not some unbelievable situation, a hunting situation, you know. And the same thing with obedience. There's certainly needs to be obedience, but don't let that cloud your judgment of dog performance. And that's what I love about the Federation. I think we really see the dog's performance. Certainly at a high level at PE, you can't be a knucklehead out there as a handler, but uh, I think it's just a great system. But how did you find Chad willing, or did you hold a gun to his head to take over the reins of the Federation?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. This guy, this Chad work guy, kept showing up at these all these different events, and I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And what's he keep hanging around for? Because he never had a dog. He was just watching, and he showed up at tests and seminars, and then he started calling me and asking me questions, and next thing you know, he's out here hunting with me in Idaho. So I'm not quite sure how that all happened, but
So it
there's another.
wasn't like you saved your life in a bar or anything like that, or nothing, nothing cool. Well, Chad, give everybody a little introduction to yourself. You are now currently at the helm at the reins. Was that the right? What do we say in the Federation? Do we say CEO? Do we say president?
Chair.
What do we say?
Yeah, chair, president. Yeah.
Chair, president. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been around hunting dogs my whole life. I mean, when I was a kid, a lot of it was around beagles and hound work, and always wanted some bird dogs, and never really could get one until I could buy one on my own. And I did that when I was a teenager, somewhere in the '90s. I purchased my first bird dog from a guy named John Ipax, which was had Lakeshore Kennels, and never heard of any sort of testing before that. And John was an ABDA guy, and I believe he had the first VC out of that chapter, the Finger Lakes chapter. And I end up at this guy's house, and he invites me for dinner. He had one pup left, and great guy in there with his wife, and showing me ribbons and talking about dog testing and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, this sounds like so much fun. And, it wasn't long after that I joined NAVDA. I'm a life member as well. I've been in that organization for, over 20 years, maybe the late 90s or early 2000s. I don't remember when I joined, but, really found it hard to participate just based on location. Seemed like every chapter I went to, it was at least a 2 to 3 hour drive, and I belonged to different chapters in Pennsylvania and New York, where I'm from. But fast forward through some years, and many hunting dogs later, I end up getting to know quite a few people in the dog world. I actually did some derbies and did some AKC stuff. Knew a couple AKC judges, field level, field trial level, horseback stuff. Never participated in horseback, but I never ran a dog, but I'd been to some events. And most of those guys that I hunted with growing up, a lot of them had long tail dogs, and they were, setters and pointers. And I was a guy with the short hairs, which was pretty different. Had lots of comments about that. I entered my first derby and I show up and these guys are, poking fun at this teenage kid about, where's the dog's tail and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
we had a good showing. So lots of fun though. And, through the years, I got to meet some great people. Well, Jeff was one of those guys I happened to meet at, like he mentioned, some testing in the Northeast chapter and a couple of seminars we did. And I've got to know quite a few folks from there. And, started hanging around before I ever, ran a dog in BHDF. I was, just interested in mostly the difference for me from the different types of testing that I've been to is it's really based on hunting. Um, there's a lot of focus on the dog work in the scenarios. The 10-point system was very intriguing to me.
Yeah.
Very very detailed person, and I like the dissemination with the the different levels you can get with a scoring system, and I just naturally drew to it. And we had a meeting and our national meeting, and Jeff was looking for some help, and I had no intention of running for the chair. There wasn't many volunteers, but saw a need for the organization. I thought I could bring something to it. And that's kind of where we're at. It hasn't been quite a year yet, but we're working through some growth and lots of fun stuff with the federation. And to be honest, it's been really rewarding. I really appreciate the background of the federation, and as Jeff mentioned, it's, and you mentioned as well, Ron, it's based on hunting, and that's the one thing that I notice out of my experience. The hunting side of the testing and the information that you get, it's a different level. The hunting simulation, the search behind duck particularly,
Yeah.
is one of my favorite tests. And I hunt ducks, and I don't know a better test than that, to be honest. In fact, I watch my dogs in North Dakota use that same simulation of the test. Actually happens in real life quite often with a wounded duck on the water, and
Right.
the dog hunting it out. So that's a little bit about my background. Like to spend lots of time hunting, and like good dog work and good people. And I find that I meet some of those folks at all dog events for sure, but specifically with BHDF, I've really found some really neat people out there and got to meet some good people.
Yeah. Jeff, what like if you had an edict and say, okay, glad you volunteered for this, what would have been on your list of things? I don't know exactly what, I have not sat in on meetings or anything. I know you're going to have one at Pheasant Fest. And I should say that maybe if I said it again, I'll say it 3 times during the podcast that the VHDF will be at Pheasant Fest, and with I'm sure Chad, Jeff, a couple other people to help man the booth. We're all going to be together in the same quadrant area. But if you had something to tell Chad after that meeting when he raised his hand, or did you put a buzzer in his seat to make him stand up? I don't know how you got him to raise his hand, but you might have used an old Tritronic 70 on his seat or something. I don't know what you did, but what would you have said to Jeff, say, or to Chad, say, this is something I'd like you to work on, or this is something that we need to go forward with as you're taking over?
I think the reason that that Chad is in the role now is because we could see, I mean, he had a broader vision for VHDF.
Okay.
And, but I think he probably jumped into it about 2 years before he wanted to. I think he wanted to really learn the system inside and out. And VHDF was at a point where, it was serving its constituents well, but the question was, okay, are we gonna do anything else? And the timing was such that if we were going to try to expand the organization at all, last year was the perfect time to start. And out of everybody who's shown interest, I think, Chad's put a lot of thought into it, and he had just a huge number of ideas that he's throwing out on things that needed to be done. And so, we had a meeting before the meeting, and we all stood up, and Chad was still sitting down, and that's how he got the job. We elected him in
It was like
with
it was
the
like
pre-meeting.
yeah, it was one of those like Abbott Costello movies where they were all lined up in the army as privates, and they said volunteers step forward, and the rest of them step back, and then you were left. It looked like you stepped forward.
Yeah, again, I think he had his eye on the job, but I think he wanted to get a little more experience with it first, and so we're extremely appreciative and excited that he jumped into the role, because he's already, in the last year now, he's done more than we've done probably in the last 5 or 6 years. So
Chad, let's say there's going to be a lot of people at Pheasant Fest. There's going to be a lot of a good amount of just your regular old Labrador pheasant hunters, which doesn't mean they can't come to a federation test. We know that, but there's going to be a lot of people there, and if people are showing an interest in this, is there a program for just like NAVDA did back in the day? Is there a program for a group of people or an existing chapter or a defunct chapter to start their own federation chapter? Is there a system in place now for that?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't call it a system. I mean, there's certainly a process. I think it's pretty easy to do. But as we know, I think, typically kicking tires, there's always going to be a lot of interest. Maybe 1 out of 10 will, 1 out of 20 might actually, move it forward.
Yeah.
But you gotta churn through, you gotta turn over those stones. And, I think for us, it's getting out there and getting visible. This is, I think, the first time we've ever done anything at this large of an event. But we definitely will handhold and help folks through that process. In fact, there's a chapter I'll say there's a group of folks beginning to have discussions in the Maine area. I think there's a pretty good success of that one taking off as well. And, I've said it on their meetings. And in fact, I think there's the next meeting, I think, is around Pheasant Fest, and I'll try to sneak away and set in. And, they haven't formed a board yet, but they're working on that.
Yeah.
But it's really pretty simple to do. It just, it takes 3 to 5, 6 people to, roll their sleeves up and do a little bit of legwork, get a board formed, do your filings, erect a chapter essentially, and find some grounds. And, what I would mention to those folks that are asking those questions, whether it's folks that may listen to the podcast or we see them out there at the show, don't try to have it all solved. Don't think that you have to have everything figured out before you go and move it forward. I know that from my own experience.
Yeah.
Don't try to have the water figured out and all the testing and who's going to be a judge, and don't worry about those things. It's a little bit organic, and we'll help through that process. And it really just takes some dedicated folks that want to spend time improving their skills with hunting and their partner, which most of the time's a dog or other people. Once in a while we get a few folks that don't have dogs that show up, and that's good too, because they want to be part of it. But I mean, people really want to improve their hunting capability with their dog, and it's something people enjoy to do, and we certainly want to promote that.
The system. Yeah. Oop,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
Jeff, when you started it, I know it was I think it was in 2008. Um, was it basically chapters that were already in existence that said, I want to do the testing? Because I kind of want to make sure that's known. Like I got to see Jeff out at the Highland Grounds a few years ago. But then when I went to the workshop, judge's workshop in Pennsylvania, that was an existing chapter of Versatile Hunting Dog of NAVDA. And it's I mean, there's no conflict of interest. That same chapter is basically a federation chapter, right? So you don't have to be green. You could be a small chapter that wants to try something different, or have a few more test days a year, or like I said, do something different. What was it like when you started it, Jeff? Was it mostly just I'm gonna say like expatriates that started it, that were already in the versatile world?
No, it was actually mostly breed clubs.
Okay.
There were and actually we use the term chapter, but it's really an affiliate,
Okay.
because there were a number of breed clubs. For example, there was our first meeting in Reno, Nevada. There's about 30 people there, and most of them were from one of the breed clubs. There were large Munsterlander, small Munsterlander was there, Spinoni, Griffon Club. Um, you know, all of those folks were very interested in it because um, their breeding program may or may not fit into the existing testing facilities like NAVDA or JGHV.
Right.
So as you know, with VHDF, it's very flexible. There's no prizes and there's no arbitrary cutoffs, so people could make their own cutoffs.
Right.
And that was the initial start. So yeah, any club. So, German Longhair Pointer Club was an affiliate.
Mhm.
And then, the folks in Minnesota started their own. They were a dedicated VHDF chapter. They hadn't done anything else before. They came together and they just wanted a VHDF chapter.
Gotcha.
So you could be an AKC club, and you
Right.
could affiliate and host a VHDF test. And then the breed clubs, some of them stuck around, and a lot of them are doing their own thing. And so then it became more of this, dedicated chapter setup that it is today.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I always get the acronyms wrong. The German system of testing is what's the four letters? VG, what is it, Jeff?
JGHV.
J hey,
JG,
quiet. JGHV, because and that's what the JGH. Hang on one second, guys. I gotta go kill a corgi. So Jeff, the JGHV, that was put together for just what you said, breed clubs in Germany, right? It was not just the Drahthaars. It was for every versatile breed in Europe, wasn't it?
Correct. And I'm not an expert on that, but there's multiple layers of testing and registry bodies in Europe. But yeah, JGHV is actually a separate entity. So you could be, if you were a Draftar person, you could be a VDD judge through the VDD, or you could be you could judge a VDD test as a JGHV judge. And there's actually a separate JGHV USA, which is a separate club of JGHV here in the United States, and they host their own tests here too as well.
Gotcha. So that's kind of like the shoes you were filling with the federation, then, basically, right?
Pretty much. Actually, we actually contacted JGHV about the possibility of running dogs in their test that were not FCI registered. And
Okay.
the people that were in the leadership of that organization at the time said, there's a way that we could technically do that, but it's going to create a lot of problems, so we don't even want to go there. You'd be better off starting your own, if that's what your need is. If your need is truly breeders and breed clubs in the US that don't utilize FCI, then you could start your own and allow any registry, which is what we do.
Right. Which is really great. It's almost kind of like that Garth Brooks song, thank God for unanswered prayers, because it might have been fine if you were an extension of them, but for people who don't know, the FCI, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, is what we would refer to as the AKC in this country. It's the European pedigree governing body, right, for all the breeds.
Essentially, there's a few more layers, but the FCI does hold the pedigrees and would be and the final registration. I mean, you'd still have to go through a breed club in Europe, but you couldn't just very, very seldom could you just independently register with FCI, depending on what country you're in, I guess. But that'd be the best comparison, would be AKC.
And Chad, there's no future plans of a federation registration organization layer coming in, is there?
Yeah, certainly not in my term.
Okay, good.
And I don't know that, that's something that always comes up, and never say never. I don't know that that's the intention. There's plenty of different registrations out there you can do with your dog, and there's some benefits to it, but there's a lot of work to it as well. And at the end of the day, for us, I think right now it doesn't really fit what we're trying to accomplish, and and trying to have a good database of fundamentals of dog testing, very granular dog testing and evaluations, and that's our focus right now.
And one thing that Jeff's mentioned, and I want to hit that home to people too, there's no age limit. Like if you want to do hunting aptitude test, the first test, the hay test, your dog there's not an age requirement on that, right? So if you kind of came in late to the game and you got this dog and you meet these people, you can enter at any age.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead, Jeff.
No, yeah, any age is fine. And again, there's practical limitations to that, but if you're, each breed club can set their own standard, like the Poodle Pointer Alliance has a cutoff for that test. Okay. And let's say you had a new breed, or let's say you were like you're working on Bronco, your gene pool is so small that when you first start, you might want to be 20 months or something like that, and you can change that as you get better qualified individuals for breeding. Then you might take it down to 16 months or 14 months or whatever. But that's there. Yeah. So all of that is generic. It's done that way to allow the breed clubs to adopt whatever criteria they need for their particular breed.
Well, and I know that was problematic for many. Like I judge, and I'm sure you did more, Jeff, where you look at the dog's birthday and the person drove in across the country because it was going to be 16 months old tomorrow.
Yeah.
That I always felt bad for those people. Like, boy, you couldn't, but they wanted to, usually for their breeder, which is always encouraged by a lot of good breeders, to get your dog tested so that breeder gets some data, some feedback. Because Jeff, you've sold dogs all for many, many years all over the country, and if it wasn't for test scores that you get to come back and see, you'd lose contact with a lot of people that buy your dog. I mean, how many people would you say really stay in touch with a breeder, Jeff? 10%, 30%, where
Yeah, 10% probably, but and the testing is very valuable feedback because it's random for the most part, and it happens geographically diverse areas. So it's very useful.
yeah, yeah, because when you see that, the time I attempted to do some breeding with the Broncos, and doing the best I could, yeah, I had 4 dogs tested in 4 different places, and I was like, gosh, I guess I was right. Those were 2 good dogs I put together, or at least okay dogs I put together. We're never going to call them good. We'll call them okay. But no, I think that's why I encourage people who, certainly there's people that love to test their dogs and love the game of it, if you want to call it a game, but the end goal is for hunting. And I think at least the Federation now as a group is from what I can tell, is it 100% hunter, Chad? Could we go on a limb, or could we say 98% hunters?
Yeah, I don't know that we could ever say 100% hunters. I certainly don't know all the folks to test, but it's highly regarded as hunting. The practicality of the evaluation system, as well as the individual tests that folks can enter and participate in, is based on the best type of hunting scenarios that we can come up with. And we're constantly trying to improve those as well.
Yeah,
And the AHA test is probably one of my most favorite tests, for sure. And it's really a gun dog test, and it's pretty true to life that most people would go through that test, and when they're done, that it feels like their first or second hunting season with a dog. It really
right,
does.
right. Anything new that's coming up that I wouldn't know about, or that people wouldn't know about with the Federation, or is it just a matter of getting the word out and trying to have a growth spurt, so to speak?
Yeah, a couple of things I'd mention. We're still we will always continue to grow. We do have a couple new chapters or affiliates that started up. One's in Ohio. There's a central chapter that's located in Iowa as well. There's discussion about an affiliate member in Maine, which I mentioned.
Yeah,
There's some discussions in Canada as well. So, I think there's a good, healthy interest in our, in the growth of the VHDF system and the processes, as well as people participating. There's lots of interest. One of the challenges we have is, geographically, there's folks that are interested that there's not a chapter near them.
right.
And like any startup, even though we're well over 10 years into it, there still needs to be people who are willing to you know grow it organically around their area and start chapters up and try to have conversations. And so that's kind of exciting. I would say we're doing a refresh of things. We're really taking a hard look at our data management system and trying to improve that on our website. Those are things that are probably one of our top priorities. The fundamental um, obligation I think that we have as an organization is to ensure that we have data quality, and we can serve that data up to folks that enter the test, and breeders and breed clubs, and folks that are interested in looking for pairings of dogs and want to understand information. Conformation and blood tracking are two things that, they're not new, but they're certainly a complement to our organization. I
Yeah,
think we're getting quite a bit of traction with conformation as well. I think folks ought to understand that and understand the mechanics of how your dog and your hunting partner work in the field. And I think there's some excitement there. And we're kicking around the new logo, what's been talked about for a little bit now, and we might be rolling out something soon. Stop by and see us at Pheasant Fest at our booth, and maybe you'll get a gander at the new logo if it's ready, which will be exciting.
Or maybe you could vote on it
Yeah, for sure,
if we're still at the voting stage.
for sure.
So real quick, how was I'll start with Chad. How was your hunting season? Were you too busy or were you not busy?
Oh,
Or you
my hunting
unbusy
season,
enough?
was fabulous. There was one. I had one complication to hunting season that I'm still dealing with an injured dog. But my hunting season was very extended this year. Jeff mentioned it on the onset, but ended up spending time hunting with some great people in multiple states this year. Ended up, from Iowa to Montana, Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota, um, for multiple weeks. Probably spent maybe 8 to 10 weeks hunting this year out west, and um, spent some time in New York and Pennsylvania as well at home, and got to do some late season duck hunting. And it was a great year. It just happened to work out where I had some um, extra time to be able to do that this year, and certainly took advantage of that. In fact, really just wrapped up hunting season. We're still doing here in New York, and we're still doing a little bit of rabbit hunting. I have some hounds and some beagles too, so we're still doing a little bit of that. But got to do some hare hunting as well. So lots of species of birds this year. Lots of healthy populations of coveys of birds everywhere. I would say, even the grouse population around me has vastly improved over the last few years, which is
Good to
really
hear.
nice.
Yeah.
At Pennsylvania and New York, it's not anywhere near the top levels, but I would say it's improved from in the 5 year run. It's certainly been improved. But yeah, one minor hiccup with a dog. I had a issue when I was out west with a dog that had inhaled the grass on, and I didn't know what had went on until weeks after I'd gotten home, and started to go through testing and why the dog wasn't eating and lethargic, and we thought Lyme and all those things. But the dog ended up having a pretty significant surgery and removed a large mass, a neutrophil out of the dog's lung area attached to the heart and the rib cage, and it was pretty extensive surgery. And we're still going through the healing process of that. But she's doing great. I was actually up in Ithaca yesterday, and she's still on probably another month or 2 months of antibiotics. But it's been about a 12 to 16 week venture on that. Lots of trips to the hospital, and like I said, the surgery was pretty significant for that. But anyways, that was one of the unhighlights, I guess I'll have over all the highlights. But
Well, I don't think
it's hunting.
It's hunting. Yeah. No, nobody, like I always remember like the first dog I had, it seemed like I didn't get barbed wire cuts. I didn't have this. I didn't have that. I never had, didn't even have a broken nail. And then that luck, eventually that luck changes, right? And I had a dog that I don't think it inhaled it, but from what my vet surmises is that the grass on went in its mouth. So it was in the skin of the mouth, and it just kept migrating back, but it was always just under the skin.
Mhm.
And it ended up right on the side of his rib cage. And I think it was the third time he opened that up, or he drained it twice, antibiotics and everything. Didn't know what it was. He just assumed it was a form. And sure enough, he finally had to put the dog, under anesthesia, and it was a grass on that migrated all the way to the rib cage of that dog under his skin. So do you have to deal with, is that an Idaho thing, Jeff, or is that more of a Midwestern curse we have?
Oh, it's bad out here too with the cheatgrass.
Oh, the cheatgrass does that too?
Yeah.
Oof. Have you suffered through that one yet?
Oh yeah. I could tell you some stories there. We've had cheatgrass pulled out of just about every place you can imagine. And some of the really good vets out here who are highly experienced with it know how to handle it. But you could take that same dog to the best vet at Cornell, and if they weren't practiced in dealing with cheatgrass, they'd be doing everything wrong and create a problem that drags on for weeks, if not months. But if they know what they're doing, they can usually get it out pretty quick.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. You hear about it once in a while, but it depends on where, I guess, where I didn't realize the cheat grass. I always thought it was something more in the Midwest that had that, but sheesh. So how was
There's
your-
there's
Go ahead.
almost a dozen. Like anything, I did a lot of research going through this. I mean, there's foxtail, there's all sorts of nicknames for different grass, but there's 10 to 12 different types of grass that have some type of a barbed hook on a seed or an on that
Yeah.
can cause significant problems. But it's mostly a Midwest issue. It's not something, as Jeff mentioned, that you're going to see in the East too much. In fact, I had heard about these types of things and knew, a friend of mine had the same thing happen to his dog a couple of years ago. In fact, we were hunting in South Dakota when I was talking to him about that. And, he shared what happened with his dog. And I'm like, damn, I think it's got to be what's going on with my dog. Because I knew I'd wiped lots of grass out of their eyes and nose every day. We were just in, hunting in a lot of that type of cover. And when I'd gotten home from that second trip there, my dog hadn't improved, and we went and did some more testing and had some ultrasounds and that kind of thing. And really, I feel like I kind of diagnosed. I was pretty strong opinion that was what happened based on my experience and based on what I knew what the symptoms were. And after we'd gotten some of the blood work back and the pathology done, that it was some sort of a bacteria from a type of seed. And the vet's like, you're right. And we don't see it that often, but it happens quite often, unfortunately, in the Midwest. And I've got to know quite a few different folks that have been through a similar process just by word of mouth. And, it's pretty painful for the dog. It's an extreme surgery. You're cutting the rib cage open, and, the dog, in my case, the mass that was in there was about the size of a sheet of paper, and it was large, and it was attached to the lung, the sternum, the heart, the diaphragm. It was attached to everything. And the dog had crashed a couple times during surgery, and it didn't look good. But the healing process has been good, and thank God for good vets and surgeons, because she's really almost healed up and back to herself. So
Right.
Anyways, something to familiarize yourself with. Not to be scared to go hunting,
Right.
but
Right.
folks should understand what those signs and symptoms are, because it can go undetected for a while and it's detrimental to the dog in the end.
Yeah. Jeff, how was your season out in Idaho?
Horrible. I don't think we.
I don't think there's any birds left in Idaho.
I don't think we had a bird out here.
Oh, so you had to travel out of state then, pretty much.
Yeah, Montana.
Montana.
They had quite a few birds over there.
Yeah, I think that's where everyone's going next year is Montana. I think so.
Hey, one other to add to what Chad said on the you asked what was new with VHDF. A couple other things I want to add to that real quick. He mentioned the confirmation program, and we have a new director of confirmation, Jared Deutsch, and he has been really stepping up to the plate. He put on a intensive confirmation seminar last year, and through that process, we were able to get a number of new confirmation judges approved.
Right.
And they are having out in Pennsylvania a standalone confirmation event in March, and it's on the calendar for anybody that's interested on the VHDF website. But Ron, it's like you did one of your, was it Behind the Dog?
Right.
Series?
Yeah. Yep.
So one of the gal that had short hairs you had on that does a lot of that, and it's very similar. It's a structure evaluation of the entire dog from head to toe. So that program is expanding and it's out there. And then the other thing I'll add is we have a testing committee that is working on a few rule changes for some of the tests. Nothing extensive, all good stuff. We're actually raising the bar in a few areas. Steadiness in the AHA, for example. These are areas that we're seeing that people have raised the bar themselves. It's kind of like they put the sensors out on the highway to see how fast people are driving, and then that's what they make the speed limit.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So in those areas where we're finding these dogs are better prepared than what the test calls for, we're gonna raise the bar in those areas. So that's that. You can look forward to that for the test rules for 2026.
Right. Oh, real quick too. I remember somebody brought up years ago, like, they'd like to have a blood test because they happened to have they had a DK short hair, a German registered short hair, and that was kind of shot down immediately. Is that something that is going to be offered or has been offered sometimes, Jeff, is a blood track test?
So that is on the table as well.
That's
We
cool.
currently offer a blood track in the PE test. We had a blood tracking seminar last year, and we have a number of blood tracking judges approved. And you could get a blood tracking certification currently only by running your dog in a PE test.
Okay.
But on the table is, yes, a standalone blood tracking test to be offered.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, because the word versatile is in there. So it's nice that we're not ignoring, like, we're not saying these dogs are great dogs and saying, oh, couldn't find a pork chop in a phone booth if it was bleeding, the blood, I've always wanted to do that with a dog. I have not done it. I kind of did it once, but it was off leash. It was against the law. It was many years ago, and that statute of limitations has run out. But I'm excited about that. I'd like to learn that a little bit. And that's something really to offer. It may be just, and maybe I'm wrong, Jeff, or Chad, maybe one dog at a PE test would say, I would like to, with proper notification, not last minute, you could squeeze that into a testing day, right? You could get the blood track laid, say in the morning, and in the afternoon, you could run that blood track. Is that how that would work?
It is. We've done a number of them, and it is time consuming.
Yeah.
So any chapters or anybody having a test needs to consider that. It takes you an hour to lay the thing, and then you got to let it age for 3 or 4 hours, and then you got to come back and run the test, and that takes you another hour. So each blood track is gonna add 2 hours to your test.
Yeah.
But it's something that most people do not know how to do, but it's probably the easiest thing for the dog to do that there is, and they all love it. It's just, that's why we did the seminar. It's really just a matter of, here's the equipment you need, here's how you handle the blood, here's how you do the track, and here's how you train the dog. And it's all very basic things, but most people don't have a mentor to show them how to do it because, it is against the law in so many states.
Right. Especially obviously off leash, but again, then it's also so popular now, and it's becoming available in states on leash, which, I mean, this would be, I'm sure you have to follow your state's rules, but I don't know many versatile dog owners that don't throw an arrow or a bullet at a deer. I mean, that's a great layer to have into the federation. I hope that grows right along with it.
Well, I know for a fact that there were people that had never done it before that went to the seminar last year, who then used the dog that they trained for the seminar or at the seminar to recover wounded deer.
Yeah. Which is what we're supposed to be doing, right? We don't want
Exactly.
don't want to lose game. We don't want to lose game. All right. Well, listen. So Jeff, Chad, who else is going to be at Pheasant Fest, Chad, with the group?
Well, I mean, about half of our board will be there from the national board. There's going to be folks from many of the chapters that'll be out there.
Right.
Um, we're as Jeff mentioned, about confirmation. That's one of the things we're hoping to showcase. Stop by the booth. We'll have some dogs. We'll have a set of wickets. We're going to talk about structure there. We'll do
Nice.
that throughout the weekend. Unfortunately, Jared can't be there, but Jared's really grown that. Jeff kind of stole some of my thunder here for talking about pheasants forever. But I was going to mention the great job that Jared's doing as well. And unfortunately, last minute he's had some work obligations that he can't make it out there. But we'll fill in for him, and you'll probably see him around at some of our events this year and next year for sure at other chapters. And it's something that it's really growing some legs. And I think you know it's like the blood tracking. Confirmation is something it's of utmost importance. And anyone who hunts dogs in the manner that some of us do, when you're talking days, hours, and weeks at a time, it's so important. And you can see it. You might not know what's happening, but when you put dogs down in pairs and you see dogs wear out, you see feet injuries, you can tell there's some structure problems. Or if you're hunting with a buddy, potentially, and it'll show its face. So that's something we're pretty proud of, and we're going to have some demonstrations going on out there, and I
Nice.
think that'll be good for folks. But there's going to be a really good mix of people out there. Stop by and see us. We'll have a few giveaways. We'd like to have folks. If you're not a member, please stop by and talk to us about joining membership. And like I said, we're getting a lot of calls from different. I had a call the other day from someone from South Dakota that's actually going to drive to a test, and wanted to know where the nearest chapter was and that sort of thing. So lots of good stuff. But we'll have about half of our board out there, and then there's quite a few folks from affiliate chapters that'll be out there as well.
Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. I'm going to be seeing you guys in no less than 2 weeks from today.
Sounds good.
All right.
Looking forward to it, Ron.
I look forward to it every year, and this year it's got a new flavor to it. It's got something I'm pretty excited about, and that not that I can speak on confirmation, but I've been talking about it because when I got those Broncos from overseas, and it was not a popular breed here, I actually got into doing some show ring stuff, and they had some judges come over from Italy, and watching him put his hands on the dogs and describing the dogs that perform better literally were better conformed. I mean, it's probably a little bit of both, and you could have a good hunting dog that doesn't have good conformation, but he's not going to last. But for the breeders to have a venue to even say a breed club could come up and ask for I'm sure this could happen down the road. We'd like to have a confirmation show, not for the ribbons, but for the education of it, for that breed, because there's a lot of people breeding. There's a lot of people breeding. There's a lot of knowledge that needs to be shared out there.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something there. There's been a bit of a gap there in the history of dog testing when you
Yeah.
talk about structure and confirmation as well as field testing. There's been a gap there. There's people who do breed shows and compete at higher levels. We're not that club. Ours is field quality and form and function at the field level, and we're not trying to replace any big AKC confirmation.
No.
But I'll tell you, there's a lot of interest, and I think in the next, I'll say 5 years, we as the federation are going to attract more of those types of folks that are looking for field testing and breeding information as well as confirmation. And we're seeing it. I've talked to many AKC folks who are interested in that and want an all-in-one report card. And we have that. We have that capability, and you have a total assessment of your dog, including if you want blood tracking. And it's a 10-point system, and it's very detailed. and it's easy information for you to see and evaluate as a dog owner, as a hunter, as a breed club, as a breeder. And it's really just getting people to look at the system and understand it. And I don't know anyone that says, wow, this is, terrible. Everyone says, well, this is great information. They can, people, honestly, it leads into more conversation because then they want to know, like, what's the difference between a 6 and a 7 and a 7 and an
Right.
8?
Right.
And it's so detailed that you get into that level of, it's actually amazing. And if you're interested in good dog work and you want to understand what steadiness is, go to one of these tests and watch a dog that's steady. When you're noticing tail twitching, nose and head movement, eye movement, it's a different level of steadiness that you're looking for as one example, versus other organizations, which they're all good. But again, we like the quality that we have and the information, the granularity of our testing. And it does add value if you're willing to give it a shot.
Well, Jeff, thanks for starting it. And Chad, thanks for picking up the reins. I'll do anything I can in the future. Of course, we'll have I'm sure we'll have a few episodes a year talking about this because I loved and I want to hear about the growth, and maybe I can come out to wherever they have if they have another blood tracking seminar with that fella. I'd love to come out and interview him and really get a deep dive into that. I think people would, along with the confirmation, with the blood tracking, that'd be subject for a couple great podcasts down the road this year. So it's, you keep a hold of me, you keep the reins on me, and keep me up on when you're doing stuff, and I'll be there.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, Jeff, Chad, I thank you for your time, and I'm going to put this out on Sunday so we get a couple weeks before. I don't want to just throw this out the Sunday before Pheasant Fest. So let's hope we get a few more people come by the booth.
Yeah, maybe Ron too. You could post what the numbers are. I don't have those offhand. If we know what the numbers are to advertise that, but
I can do that.
Maybe when you do your intro, you could share that with folks.
I can certainly do that, and I can tell them all they got to do is look for that big 4-wheel pop-up camper near the Purina dog stage side of the world, and they'll find us.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to find it.
Yeah, we're right on one of the main walking aisles. We're near all the breed clubs that are there, so it's the perfect home for the federation. So, I think you guys are going to have some laryngitis, Chad and Jeff and crew, at the end of that weekend.
Yeah, well, we certainly have a lot of good help out there. Like I said, there's going to be several presidents of some of these clubs coming, which they'll be able to share information. Even some of our new clubs, a lot of our presidents at some of these on some of these boards at the club level are going to be out there, and that'll be great because there'll be lots of discussion and lots of people. And this is about communication and sharing information, and at the end of the day, it's about meeting good people, and that's what we hope to do.
That's all we are, is good people.
That's right.
All right, guys, I'm going to split. I'll let you guys get back to work. Jeff, you can go back, take a nap. And Chad, you got somewhere to go tomorrow to what? Play volleyball or something? What are you doing?
Yeah, we're headed to Syracuse. My daughter plays travel volleyball, so we're just senior year, so we're finishing up. We're finishing up some of that stuff. It's the last of the first. I'm enjoying my last little bit of I coached my kids in hockey growing up and watched them play sports, and it's when they leave the nest, I got one left, and I only got a few months left to enjoy it.
Well, I can't say I
have
ever
to get another dog.
I can't say I ever did that, but I will say anecdotally, I had a daughter that ran cross country for a while, and I did go to one meet. So I'm not bragging about it. It was quite boring. I saw him leave, and then later on, I saw him come back. I didn't get that. That was a true traveling sport. They were just gone. It's like all these parents were there. Like, what the fuck are we doing here?
Hey, Ron.
Yeah.
Before you go,
Yeah.
do me a favor. Look at the test calendar on the VHTF website. We are really strained this year because we got 2 new chapters. And we need some help judging. So wherever you're willing and available, there's Pennsylvania, there's Ohio, I think we have Iowa covered. There's Minnesota, and possibly even Idaho. So take a look at that and see. Let me know if you're available for any of those. I'd appreciate it.
I will. I will do that. In fact, I've shed some pounds. My knee doesn't hurt as bad, and yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm ready. Put me in, coach. Put me in.
All right. All right. Well, thanks. Thanks for the podcast. Always a privilege, and look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
All right. See you guys. Be good.
All right. Take care. See ya.